Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Listing Agent Podcast. My name is Keith Hernandez, your host. And today we're going to be talking about investments, 1031 exchanges, and giving. Welcome to the Listing Agent Podcast. Today I'm here with Phil Atwan, who is going to tell us a little bit about himself. Phil, you want to tell the audience who you are? What do you do for work?
Yeah, Keith,
What do
good
you
morning.
What do you like for breakfast?
Yeah, that changes from day to day. It depends on which restaurant I go to. if I have a breakfast meeting. Well, first of all, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course.
And the thing is, what do I do? I'm a relationship maker. What I do is I go out there and find out what's important to people, and I help them meet it. And I do that through the area of something called a 1031 tax-deferred exchange. There's a lot of people out there that are either unaware of it, but need the services and not sure how it works. I help them figure it out. I lay the buffet out, you mentioned breakfast, for them so they can pick and choose what's best for them. I'm not here to tell them what to do. I'm here to show them what's available. And they do what's best for them, which is a perfect thing.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit, because a lot of people out there that don't know what a 1031 exchange is.
Okay.
Can you tell us what it is?
Yeah, I can. Congress created this in 1921. So it's been 102 years now, right? And they allow people who either own farmland or commercial buildings or shopping centers, single-family rentals, condominium rentals, 2 to 4 units, 5 units and above, all kinds of properties, whether it be gas stations, a car wash, or self-storage, whatever. They allow you to sell it after you've held it for 2 years and have utilized the service of it in 2 years and document that service on your tax return. And then you get to sell the property and exchange it or trade it to buy something that's going to be better than the one you already have. Equity grows over time. And the higher the equity grows, the lower the rate of return that equity is bringing into the owner. And the reason why is because they can't charge enough rent to justify the additional equity. So what do people do? They re-leverage the equity by selling, buying something bigger, or buying multiple properties, because the 1031 exchange is aimed to not only defer all these taxes that you pay when you sell, it's helping you to re-leverage so you can have more paychecks every month from more front doors that you own. Number two, it's there to create when the market continues to go up, and market's cyclical, the weather is cyclical. We're in summer now, but fall is coming, and then we'll be winter again. And I won't be wearing this; I'll wear a coat and long sleeves. But then spring and summer will come back again. Well, the market is that way too, and the market will continue to grow over time as long as people want to live here.
Right.
And that's the bottom line. So we help people to re-leverage their equities by going into more properties that will, number one, generate income. Number two, take advantage of appreciation, because you're better off appreciating, Keith, with multiple properties as opposed to having all your equity in one, because only that one will appreciate. And number three, to create additional tax write-offs to reduce the amount of taxes you pay off the rent you collect. That's what a 1031 exchange is.
That was a great explanation.
My pleasure.
So let me ask you this question. I hear you with the equity growth. I hear with all that. Do you think there's equity growth all around in different states, or can you tell us your view on that part?
I was speaking in Beverly Hills yesterday. I speak between 120 to 150 seminars a year.
Okay. After
After I leave here, I'm heading to Burbank to speak to another association of realtors for a seminar for a couple of hours. The bottom line is that equity is growing usually overall, but it's more pocketed, especially at times like these when interest rates go up. And now the market is adjusting, just like the season is changing. And so what happens is you have certain markets like the West Side, the Beach Cities areas. Those are the price. There's still multiple bids. The seller asks for this, but the buyers are overbidding to get the properties. That hasn't stopped.
Okay.
In those pockets. There are other pockets in other counties and other states where they've hit a plateau. And now it might be shrinking a little bit, but it will go back up again in time. So the bottom line is, it just depends on the pocket that you're in.
Right.
Orange County, you can't find anything. You know, it's just a huge pocket that is just in demand. And who sets the prices? It's always the buyer. You can ask whatever you want as a seller, but it's the buyer who's going to make the final decision. And if you say no to that buyer, you hope that you'll get another buyer who'll meet your needs. So it's all about the buyer.
Nice. Okay. And we're going to actually talk about the market a little bit too, because I think a lot of people are interested in your take on that. How did you get into this business?
Well, I began in 1982 with a large title company back then called Safeco Title Insurance. And then later on, I transitioned into a different title company in 1986. It was called Chicago Title, which is a huge title company as well. And I was there for a lot of years, and I worked the territory. And, you know, I got to know a lot about title insurance, and then ultimately I became the North LA County sales manager there. But then later on I transitioned, it's a long story short, but I went into their 1031 exchange division. And then after being there for about a year, I actually, the president of the company said to me, let's start our own company. And I said, excuse me? And it's like, I was just shocked. And I talked to my wife, she goes, what have you got to lose? So he felt that we can do this better, and we have. We're one of the largest independent exchange companies in the United States of America. So my client base is all over the country. And we can do things that other companies can't do because we have a huge understanding of how title insurance works, how the real estate market works, how the escrow works, how the lending works, and now from the tax end, not that we give tax advice or legal advice, but how the 1031 works. So we can educate people.
What was one of your, did you have a fear, that transition from taking off and starting your own thing with your associate? What was the biggest struggle? Did you have a fear? What was the one thing that was holding you back?
Yeah. You know,
and how did you overcome it?
You know what the definition of fear is, don't you? False evidence appearing real. Somebody forgot to tell us in 1999 when we began that Y2K was coming and all the computers were going to freak out and the country and the world was going to implode. But we didn't hear about that. So what we did is we were foolish enough to move forward. And it didn't happen like everybody was so petrified about. You're always fearful when you try something new. You have to calculate the gains, the possibilities, and the liabilities. And then ultimately you make a decision. You know, if you don't ever try anything, you won't fail, but you'll never turn into anything. You won't be fulfilled. Fulfillment will come by making errors and making adjustments. I think NASA is a good example of that. When they shoot a rocket to the moon, they always are adjusting. 85% of the time they're adjusting course, but they always hit their mark. That doesn't mean failure is bad. It means it helps me to readjust. And that's all we do is readjust so that we can hit our mark.
Nice. I like that. Sounds like
I do too, actually.
You sound like a very knowledgeable man. You sound very wise and you're inspiring.
Wow. Thank you.
Can you give me 3 people throughout your life or 3 people in your business, whoever it could be, that have inspired you?
Yeah. As I said to you earlier, my biggest mentor is Jesus Christ. And the reason why is because the Bible is filled with how to be a great businessman. It tells you what to do and what tells you what not to do, especially if you ever read something called the Book of Proverbs. It talks about how to be a man of integrity, how people can trust you, how people can trust what you say you're going to do and that you do it. That inspires me. And how to go out there and plant seeds. Because I know if I don't plant seeds, I'm not going to get anything back. And the next thing is I have to learn how to plant in good soil to get a good return, because the better the soil, the better my seed is going to do. And number 3, how I have to be patient with it, water it, watch it grow over time. So it will produce for me the harvest I'm looking for. So the bottom line is That's where I get my inspiration. Number two, I just, what inspires me is my wife and my family. Because if they're not before my business, I'm a failure. I've failed in life. So what good is all this money if my personal life isn't together? And number three, I listen to different podcasts. I listen to different people speaking. I don't try to go to one area. I try to listen to other people and listen to what they say and compare it to what my filter is in terms of what's good and not good as it relates to me. And I think most people do that anyway. So that's really, I mean, you can read books like Think and Grow Rich and all like that, but that just centers only on the material.
Okay.
We got to be a whole person.
Yeah.
Body, mind, spirit. And I just feel like if you're not, you're going to fail in the other ones. And what good it has if a man gains the whole world but loses himself. So that's my philosophy.
And it's up to the individual to actually deliver and actually, take that step.
Yeah, and Keith, like we just said a minute ago, I have to constantly adjust. I'm not always the perfect husband or the perfect father or the perfect grandfather, but I make the adjustment. It's not that I screw up. It's because I will. I'm a human being. But I make adjustments. And that's what we need. That's why we need to keep our mind renewed with new information.
Stay open-minded.
Open-minded to a certain extent.
Okay.
But filter what is right and wrong.
Correct.
And how I apply it.
Okay.
Because not everything everybody says is right.
Right. True. Do you have any podcasts you can recommend to
outside
people?
of this one? Yeah, there are other ones that I have. I won't mention it here right now. I don't mean to take anything away from you, but there are some, and I've been interviewed many a time and on podcasts and whatnot. And we've done this on television, we've done this on the radio, on talk radio and stuff like that. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I was on there's these women in real estate up in Ventura County, and they interviewed me, and this was the second or third time they've done it. So, my goal is to help people, inspire them, and maybe they can think about what we're talking about, at least my story.
Yeah.
Everybody has to have their own story, right? But it doesn't begin by sitting inside and not doing anything.
Right.
You have to try different things to find out what you like and you don't like. But ultimately, it's about your marketplace. It's about the people there, and you've got to find out what's important to them, because that's the key. It's not about me, it's about them. So what can I bring in an honest and ethical way to meet their needs so they can be prosperous in what they do? And that's my philosophy.
What do you think today people, what is it do you think they're lacking? Why don't people take that step? What is your thoughts on that, and what additional advice can you give them?
Good question, actually. The problem is multiple fold. Number one, they're so focused on the material that they lose relationships, and then they become unethical, or amoral. So you have to be able to know when to draw the line and what to do. Number two, I think other problem could be is when okay, I'm going to say this the best way I can. We've become too lazy in our country. We think we should be paid by the government. That I don't have to work, I can just apply for it, and the government will take care of me. We've become lazy, and we need to get out and work. If you're physically able and mentally able to do that. But most people are, but everybody will make an excuse. You've got to get out there and work. I speak in front of thousands and thousands and thousands of people. How many people am I actually speaking to? A very small percentage. Why? Because they've got fire. They've got passion. They want to achieve. They want to help other people. So they'll listen to the information and then they will apply it. See, if I have a vacant lot, vacant land, there's only one thing that's guaranteed to grow: weeds. I don't have to do anything. But if I want a return, if I'm planting corn or tomatoes or whatever it happens to be, I have to be deliberate. deliberate, on purpose. I have to be intentional. So for me to do that, I have to have a plan and work it and do the things I need to do. So I have to work.
Yeah.
WORK, right? And that's what it's all about. And I think sometimes what's lacking in our society today, there are people who overwork and there's a lot who underwork. And you've got to learn how to create that balance in your life.
That's true. Do you think the pandemic made that better or worse?
I think it made it worse.
Okay.
But I think some good things came out of the pandemic at the same time, right? It's interesting. You know, any situation you can classify as bad or good. Any president or any political thing that you even, there's going to be bad and there's going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
So which one do I choose to focus on?
True.
And
So
apply.
yeah, because
Work.
a lot of no, you're right. A lot of people it was a great way. They think that they're owed for some reason, or nobody wants to work. So, but let's talk about 1031s now.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about investments. Where do you see most people should be investing right now? What's your thoughts on that?
That's a good question. The biggest regret, there's 3 regrets most people have in life. Number 1, I shouldn't have said that, and I can't take it back, and I've caused too much damage with my words. That's a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
The second regret is I should have stepped up and said something, but I didn't. The third regret is I should have bought more property, especially since it used to cost less, but now it costs more. And people keep procrastinating. I'll never forget this, Keith. When I was new in the business back in 1982, one of my competitors back then handed out, it was just a little drawing, a picture. And the caption, there was a guy with a really long beard down to the ground with a staff. And this, it said on the bottom, this is a picture of a young boy who's waiting for real estate prices to go down. I've never forgotten that. Prices go up all the time. Yes, there are cycles like we just discussed. There are seasons. But the bottom line is it goes back up again. And of all the people I know who are the most affluent, at least in the financial end, own investment property.
Correct.
And I think it's a wise thing to save money and put a down payment and buy a property. And of all the financial affluent people I know, and I speak in front of homeowners associations like the apartment owners associations and all these other places, I see people and they tell me their stories. And you know what their stories are? I put one together and I waited over time. I saved some more to buy a second, but then I refinanced because equities had gone up.
Right.
And then I went and bought another property. See, they're not just living for today. We hear that too much, live for today.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta live for today, but you gotta plant for tomorrow too.
Right.
If you expect to eat then. And the problem is we want too much too fast, as opposed to planting and looking for the future. So you gotta do both.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta do both. And there's too much emphasis on one area. That's success.
And coming from an agent's perspective, I have all those, buyers who say I should have bought.
Those are the 3 regrets.
And honestly, even 5 years ago, it was a great market to
You'd
buy.
be worth a lot more money if you just bought one more property.
That's true.
Yeah.
When did you buy, if you don't mind sharing, when did you buy your first property?
Oh, I forgot how many years ago it's been, but it was a good property. I think it was back in 84, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
Interest rates. Everybody's complaining about the interest rates.
That's
today.
another discussion.
7.5%. Is it okay if I
Yeah,
mention
absolutely.
something? Here's
Sure.
the deal. 7.5%. It's a horrible interest rate. Yeah, if you're looking at 2.5%, it is. But when I got in the business, interest rates had just dropped to 18.5%. That's another abnormality. You're not going to see this 2.5% thing anymore. But you're not going to see the 18.5% either. The 7.5% was good. So when I bought that first property, they used to have what they call a graduated payment loan. So you get in at like 12%, and then it goes up to 14%, and then it goes up to 16%. It was a risk. I regret that I ever sold that property because I could have actually moved into it
Uh-huh.
at a later point, and it would have been the same amount I was paying for rent or less.
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching that bad boy go up in value.
Wow. What city was it in?
Pasadena.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. I would not buy another property in Pasadena. It's not my favorite place. I don't like the way the government's been running the real estate end of things there. But other than that, it's a great city to own property in.
Why do you think people hesitate to buy property right now?
Fear.
Let's hear that definition again.
Fear. False evidence appearing real. I cannot tell you how many people. One of my best friends. His name is Leo. He lives in, I think, San Marino or Pasadena right now. And he's like in his 90s now. And he used to tell me, you only buy with 3 people, me, myself, and I. He goes, go into a property by yourself. It will be worth more in time. Get into real estate. The man was 100% right. And, sometimes those people with gray hair are the best ones to talk to because they have the experience. They've done it. And we would be wise to learn from them. But any property, anywhere. You want to buy, start with a condo? Great. Go to a single family? Wonderful. A duplex? Maybe you live in the other unit. Maybe you rent out the other unit. Anything to get your foot in the water. It's a little cold sometimes when you put your toe in the water before you go in the pool. But once you adjust to it, you just will. Just don't over leverage.
Right.
But certainly don't under leverage either, because that's just as bad. So you have to take time, make a plan, be on board, and do it. You got to save the money too to get a down payment.
Right. As far as with interest rates, do you think they'll go back down again?
Not the 2.5. I think it'll go to 2.5 as well as it'll go to 18.5. Let me tell you something. I'm going to tell our listeners and our watchers right now. If you're in a market at 2.5% or you're in a market at 18.5%, you don't want to be in that market. They're bad markets. There's a reason why they're 2.5%, and there's a reason why they're 18.5%. And by the way, it went down to 18.5%. It was 21% the year before. So that means something is wrong with the economy.
Okay.
The 7.5% market, it's a good place to be. It's a great place to be. When I bought my first house, I think it was like 11.5%. The second house, not the first one. The second one.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. And remember, interest is a write-off.
Right.
You get to deduct that off your taxes.
People tend to forget that one.
They do. So you also have to pay property taxes and insurance.
Right.
But this one is a big write-off for you. So I think it's a great. I don't want a high interest rate. Don't get me wrong. But I think you get my drift.
Absolutely, and it almost sounds like we're at a pretty, would you say, average market? What's your thoughts on the market right now? What do you think we're at?
I don't know what average or normal is anymore. It's just been so abnormal over the last few cycles.
Yeah. Where do you think we're headed?
I don't know. I do know this, that the people who own property, things will happen for them. Number one, they get a rent check every month for each front door. Number two, over time it just goes up in value. And number three, as an investment property, it creates additional write-offs, which reduces the amount of income taxes they pay off the rents they collect. You're always going to be ahead by owning property from a financial point of view.
And so obviously I know you see a lot of exchanges, obviously. You deal with a lot of investors. Where do you see a lot of these exchanges going? Where are they selling and where are they going?
That's cyclical too. Right now, in the last few years since the pandemic, I've seen 25% of my base sell and get out of California. Because they're number one, it's the highest tax state in the country. Number two, and I'm going to be frank right up front with you, the problem with California, it heavily favors the tenant, and it puts the owner as a disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember the movie The Karate Kid.
I do.
Yeah, remember? I love that movie. I've seen it like 100 times. But remember when Mr. Miyagi always used to tell Danielson, balance, Danielson, balance. You got to have balance to stand up, right, and make it. Well, guess what? We don't have balance in California. It's totally towards the tenant. So that's not healthy. So I've seen investors get a better rate of return because the property costs less in most of these states. But it's funny, the rents are less, but they're not that much less. So the rate of return is higher for the investor. And it has a better cap rate for them. So the bottom line is, you're better off, and that's why 25% of the people are leaving. In terms of investment, in terms of taxes, and the way they treat owners here, we just feel like I'm done. And they're taking their properties and going other places. I see a commercial, and especially if you have like industrial, they're moving out of LA County. LA County beats you up. The city of LA beats you up on taxes. I mean, now they passed ULA, which just really jacks up the transfer taxes in the city of Los Angeles. So the bottom line is, people are saying enough's enough. I'm done. I'm going to do a 1031 exchange on my properties, get them at least out of the county, if not other places. I'm not saying that LA County is a complete bad place to be. There's still some very desirable places where you can make a really good return. But the trend is it's more of an exiting trend.
Do you see more interest? Do you think it's better to invest in residential or commercial? Where do you see the trend with both right now?
That's a good question, man. I wish I had 100% of the answer to that one. But can I just tell you what my perception is? For people, especially who've been investing in property, and their hair starts turning like my color and gray, right? And they're getting older. They don't want to manage. Many of them do not want to manage, or they're tired of hiring property managers who are mismanaging their properties, right? So what I'm seeing is investors moving out of residential and going into triple net type properties. So for example, maybe your tenant is Starbucks or CVS or Trader Joe's or whoever it happens to be, Bank of America, whoever those tenants are. They're in there mainly on a triple net lease basis. So if your tenant is Chick-fil-A, right, they're paying for my property taxes. That's part of the lease. Number two, they're paying for the insurance on the building. They're also paying for maintenance. I'm dealing now with a big corporate tenant that's not going anywhere, at least supposedly, right? So the bottom line is that I will be less married to my properties and more to my retirement life than I would, getting phone calls that there's a problem here, I got to fix this, I got to do that. And I've seen a tendency. This is not 100% by any stretch of the imagination. But by the same token, you're asking me for tendencies and trends. That's what I'm seeing.
And just to add a thought to that, I mean, I don't know, I might be wrong, but after the pandemic, it seemed like a lot of commercial leases there was a lot of vacancies for quite a while.
Office space, especially.
Office spaces.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would buy office space.
Okay.
But I just like good, big corporate tenants.
I think we would, right?
Because you know what? Right here in Whittier, remember Ford?
No.
They were a big Ford dealer on Whittier.
Oh, yes, I do.
Right?
Okay.
Remember when in the not the pandemic, but in 2005, I'm sorry, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, those really, really bad years. Remember so many businesses went out? Well, Ford was on the hook on that lease. So this owner is sitting on vacant land, and they're making the lease payment, even though nobody's there, every single month until the lease is end. That's a pretty good deal, I think. Other people have been going into what they call DSTs. A DST D stands for Delaware, like the state, statutory, as in law, and trust. So a Delaware statutory trust means I can't afford to buy the whole shopping center, or I can't afford to buy the one building, but I can buy a piece of it. And some of those offerings come through broker dealers where they can list the property, sell and do a 1031 exchange into something that they're not managing. They get a halfway decent rate of return, and the bottom line is they do nothing except collect their paycheck for the next 6 to 10 years, roughly.
What about storage? I hear a lot of talks right now about people are doing storage.
Well, that's been going on. It's been a hot market for that since probably the last 20 years, let's say. It's starting to peak in certain areas, but it still can be a very good business because you have one person running the front. It shuts down. You don't do anything else. I mean, they lift up, they put their junk in, they close it. And a lot of people pay to keep junk, which makes no sense. One of my friends had a self-storage building right over here, like 2 blocks from here. And he would store things like RVs and cars and other things. Well, eventually he wised up. He talked to one of the companies right around here, and they built and they did a triple net on the thing, and now he's making more money doing nothing. So the whole point is there's lots of opportunity out there, but it takes a wise person not to know everything, but to start talking to people who own these types of properties or real estate agents who sell these types of properties to learn more about the risks, the reward, because if there's no risk, there will never be a reward.
Yeah.
Right? But you have to know without going in blind either. You got to be wise about it. So by talking to wise counsel, wise people like yourself and other agents, who are very familiar with these industries, that will help you make a decision as to what would be best for you.
What advice can you give? Because I know there's a lot of people who want to buy a property. If they can buy something that would make them money, obviously, they would jump on it. But in today's market, it almost feels like you need 2 people, because you're usually seeing a husband and wife buy property together, but just a single person alone, it's hard, and sometimes they don't qualify. I mean, is there any advice you can give them how to get started? Or
Yes. Start saving money. Quit spending all your money on $5 coffee drinks or $7 coffee drinks. Quit eating out all the time. Save money. Be disciplined. And, we talk about deliberate, on purpose, and intentional. When you become deliberate, on purpose, and intentional with your money, you'd be surprised what you can save. And that will put you in a position to get into a piece of property. My kids are doing that right now. My youngest, who got married 2 years ago, they live in Irvine. I mean, to buy a piece of junk condo is $800,000. It's almost $1 million. Just for a small condo.
Yeah.
It's not even a townhouse. And the bottom line is that, but they are diligently focused and saving to get into a property.
Nice.
Because they know what mom and dad did.
If you have like Citibank or a lot of your banks, you have apps. And if you go onto your app, it'll show you how much you've spent on dining, how much you've spent in a whole year, a whole month. And it's just, I'm not even gonna say it makes you regret, like, oh shoot, maybe I should not be doing this so much,
They actually had commercials like that a few years ago. Remember that? When they were talking about, we need to cut some things out so we can save some money and buy a house. The question is, what do you want? Do you want it now? Or do you want to start making adjustments now so you can have it for the rest of your life? My wife and I have been married for 35 years. If you told me 35 years ago that the 35 years are going to go like this, I'd say, ha, ha, ha. But it does. You just can't live for now. You have to prepare. The ant prepares for tomorrow by storing during the summer. We have to be. That's out of the Bible too, by the way. So the bottom line is that you have to be able to think about tomorrow and how to put away some, to live on 100% of your income. Look, I understand there are urgent situations, there are medical situations, there are unexpected happenings and disasters. I get that, and I'm not making light of that at all. But I'm saying for the people who are not going through that, they can save money. They can put money into a property. Or maybe it's time, and I don't mean any disrespect, to get out of working for a fast food thing, get some education, or go into real estate or do something
Mm-hmm.
that will pay you more. You know, we don't invest in our lives anymore. You know, education is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to invest in ourselves so we can make a difference over time financially. A lot of people, they just, school, who cares?
Mm-hmm. Did you go to school?
College?
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately for me, I only graduated with an AA degree from Pasadena City College.
It's education.
But you know what? Honestly, for the person who has fire and passion in
Mm-hmm.
their heart, who are willing to work hard, that overcomes any education.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can show you people who make more money, if that's what your measuring stick is,
Mm-hmm.
who didn't but had fire. I had an uncle one time say to me, he goes, "Man," he goes, "I wasn't sure about you." He goes, "But you've really done better than most of the others." Because you got to put yourself out there. You have to have faith.
Mm-hmm.
Faith helps overcome fear. And you have to have a good plan.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's education or the school of hard knocks, or the wise people that you hang around to drill them for information, sort of like what you're doing with me,
Mm-hmm.
but in your own sphere, that makes all the difference in the world. You find the people who have been very successful in areas that you want to go into, see what they had to sacrifice and give up and do.
Mm-hmm. It's always good to learn from others, for sure.
Especially if they've been successful, especially if they're people of integrity who are doing the right thing.
I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
There's been talks about 1031. I think I've also heard it from you in terms of, they're trying to get rid of it, or they're trying to do some modifications.
Yeah.
Where do you see us with 1031s?
Okay, I'm
Going.
going to be very blunt. The government is always looking for more money, so not that they want to help people, but they want to stay in power. That's just the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
The state of California is a perfect example of that. The national scene is sort of a good example of that as well. So what they're looking to do is cut 1031s in terms of they want to reduce them. The new budget that just came out, which hasn't been passed yet for 2024, I don't think it'll be passed, because what it does, it reduces the benefit of the exchange only down to 500,000, like the principal residence exclusion.
Wow.
Yeah, and what do they claim? Well, then they start these class things where they push people against each other. Well, the rich aren't paying enough. Really? Did you know we're broke in California right now? Did you know we're deficit spending in California right now? Do you know why? Because they keep raising taxes, so these people, the 50% of the people who pay 50% of the taxes in California have left because they pushed too hard. And they've exited out of here. Remember we just talked about that?
Yeah.
So the bottom line is the business and the government has to work together. You can't make everything for a rich person, but you can't do it all legislatively for the person who's poor. We got to take care of our poor, but we have to have a balance.
Mm-hmm.
And just because somebody's enterprising and whatnot, get them involved in helping, and not just keep raising their taxes.
Right.
Because ultimately these people move away and they say, I can do this other way. Or they go to China to build stuff where it costs a lot less.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the right thing to do? I'm not here to say that, but I am here to say is you got to find a way. The government needs to find a way. Instead of just raising taxes and creating class wars, we need to be able to work together, because united we will stand.
We got to balance. It's got to be a balance to life.
Balance, Daniel, son.
I was just about to say that. Well, Phil, this has been some great information, and you really showed us a lot of informing us with a lot of stuff today.
My pleasure.
Is there any last thing you can say to a lot of self-starting entrepreneurs, business guys, realtors, who are barely trying to overcome that fear?
Yeah.
What's one thing you could say to them or give them advice on?
Well, number one, you're always going to make mistakes. And if you're not making mistakes, it means you're not trying. And that's not a good thing. I'd rather make the mistakes while I'm trying, because I could always adjust. Number 2, if you aim at nothing, you will hit it every single time. Nothing. That's the bottom line. We were designed and created to work. And our work is supposed to help other people. Mm-hmm. Our work is supposed to bring prosperity to ourselves and our children, our grandchildren, to the people that we work with. Our job is to make other people prosperous with the work we do. Everybody wins. There's balance. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So the bottom line is you've got to get out there and make a decision and then implement that and make adjustments along the way. Remember NASA. They're always off, but they always hit their target because they keep making adjustments. So you got to find out what's important to you and quit depending on other people. You got to take care. You want to be somebody who helps other people, who can give money away, who can give time away, so you can become the person you were created to be. We're not supposed to be takers. We're supposed to be givers. But you can't give if you don't have anything to give. So you got to start somewhere. And then ultimately, people will think a lot of you, and they'll say, hey, I want what this guy has.
I love that. I love that. Awesome. Well, once again, Phil, thank you so much
for
joining us today. Of course.
I'm honored that you would ask me to be here today.
You're a wise man, Phil. You're a wise man.
Well, I don't know about that, but I do know that you aim at nothing, you hit it every time.
I love that. And I think I've taken a lot of that to my own perspective, too, and will definitely give me some inspiration as well.
All the best.
Always. Thank you,
and
Phil.
And best to all your viewers.
Thank you. Thanks, guys, for listening. Have a nice day.